Take a sip, any drink, doesn't matter, and wait about 10 minutes for that first warm flush to arrive. That soft, loosening heat that spreads up from your chest and quietly tells your whole body to relax. You know that feeling. Almost everyone on Earth knows that feeling. But here is what nobody ever tells you about it. That warmth is not modern. It is not yours. It is one of the single oldest sensations a living thing on this planet can feel. It is older than money, older than writing, older than the first farm, older than the wheel. It is, unbelievably, older than human beings themselves. Because your craving for that warm glow did not begin in a bar, or a vineyard, or a brewery. It began around 10 million years ago, on a rotting forest floor in Africa, with a small, hungry, hairy ape. This is the story of how a drunk monkey ended up living inside your brain, and how the thing that once saved its life is now quietly ruining ours. 10 million years ago, our tree-dwelling ancestors had a very specific problem. The best fruit, the ripe, soft, sugar-heavy fruit packed with the most energy, kept doing the same annoying thing. It fell. It dropped out of the branches and landed on the ground, and down there, in the warm dirt, it began to rot. Wild yeast crept into that soft fruit and performed a piece of invisible magic. It ate the sugar and left behind alcohol. To almost every animal in that forest, fallen fermented fruit was mildly poisonous, something to sniff once and walk away from. But then one of our ancestors was born a little different. A single tiny change in a single gene rewired its liver so it could break down alcohol around 40 times faster than its parents ever could. That one mutation meant this one ape could safely eat the boozy fallen fruit that everything else on the forest floor had to leave behind. And in a world where you were always one hungry week from death, more food you could safely eat meant more days alive. So alcohol stopped being a poison and quietly became a signal. That sharp, sweet-sour smell of fermentation drifting low through the trees was not a warning to our ancestors. It was a dinner bell. It meant sugar. It meant easy calories lying on the ground. It meant survival, free for the taking, if you were built to grab it. Picture two young apes on the same morning. One catches that fermented smell on the breeze and feels a little pull toward it, walks over, eats, lives. The other smells the exact same thing and feels nothing, or feels disgust, and turns away hungry. Run that single choice out across millions of mornings and millions of years, and one of those apes becomes your ancestor, and the other one simply disappears. We did not learn to love that smell. We were built to love it, one hungry generation at a time, until the craving was carved so deep, it stopped feeling like a choice at all. Now jump forward millions of years to early humans walking upright across Africa. Still no farm, no pot, no brewery anywhere on Earth. They carried that ancient craving with them everywhere they went. And nature kept handing them accidents. A gatherer reaches into the hollow of a rock and finds it half full of rainwater and fallen berries, already fizzing softly in the sun. The first wine, brewed by no one. A group cracks open a wild beehive, and honey washed with rain becomes mead, the oldest alcohol we know of. Nobody sat down and invented any of this. They stumbled onto these little pockets of fermentation, felt that strange, warm, wonderful glow spread through their bodies, and did the most human thing possible. They remembered exactly where they found it, and they came back. The very first bartender in all of history was the forest itself, mixing drinks entirely by accident and leaving them out for whoever was clever enough to find them. But this gift came with a lesson. And the lesson was harsh. The same warm glow that felt so good did not stop at good. Eat too much of that fermented fruit, drink too deep from that pool of wild mead, and the world starts to spin. The legs stop working. And in a landscape full of things trying to eat you, a human who can't walk straight is a human who might not see morning. So our ancestors learned. Painfully, one mistake at a time, with no words for any of it. They figured out roughly how much was joy and how much was danger. They learned which fruit was ready and which had turned. They passed that hard-won knowledge down the way they passed down everything else, by watching, by copying, by the older ones steering the younger ones away from the mistakes that had nearly killed them. Alcohol was the first drug humanity ever met, and we started learning to handle it long before we ever understood what it actually was. And then comes the theory that takes everything you assume about history and turns it completely upside down. The story we all grew up with is simple. Humans settled down, invented farming to grow grain for bread, and civilization followed from a full stomach. But some scientists now look at the evidence and argue we may have gotten the whole thing backwards. At Göbekli Tepe, one of the oldest sacred sites ever found, older than the pyramids by thousands of years, archaeologists uncovered giant carved stone vats, big enough to hold hundreds of gallons of fermenting grain. Enough, in other words, to get a huge crowd of people drunk together, again and again. Which raises a genuinely wild possibility. Maybe we did not build the first towns and then reward ourselves with beer. Maybe it was the other way around. Maybe we put down roots, planted the very first fields, and bound ourselves to the exhausting life of the farmer for one deeply human reason, so the beer would never have to stop flowing. Because alcohol could do something no ordinary food ever could. It could dissolve the invisible wall between strangers. Put two nervous, suspicious groups of humans on opposite sides of the same fire, hand them a shared fermented drink, and watch what happens over the next hour. Shoulders drop. Guarded eyes soften. Someone risks the first joke, and someone else actually laughs. In a world with no written contracts, no courts, and no police, that loosening was one of the most powerful tools our ancestors had. A shared drink could seal a trade between rival tribes, celebrate a harvest that everyone had bled for, or turn a crowd of wary individuals into a single bonded group for one unforgettable night. It made strangers into allies. It made cooperation feel good. In a very real sense, some of the first trust humans ever extended to people outside their own family was poured out of a shared cup, and it did more than bond the living. That strange altered feeling, the warmth, the floating, the way the drink seemed to lift you slightly out of your own ordinary mind. Humans reached for it in their deepest moments, not just their happiest. When someone died, the group drank in grief around the body. When a child became an adult, they drank to mark the crossing. When they gathered to reach toward whatever gods or spirits they believed watched over them, the drink was there, blurring the hard edge between the everyday world and something larger. That slightly altered state felt sacred. It felt like a door. So alcohol wove itself straight into the oldest ceremonies we have: birth, death, harvest, worship. Long before it was ever just a party, it was the liquid that showed up at every moment that mattered, the thing humans poured out to face the biggest thresholds of a life. And hiding inside all of this was an accidental superpower nobody at the time could possibly have understood. For most of human history, the water was quietly trying to kill you. The rivers, the wells, the still ponds beside every settlement were swarming with invisible parasites and disease that could empty a person out in a matter of days. But the alcohol in beer and wine killed many of those germs on contact, which meant a weak, watery, low-strength beer was often the single safest thing a human being could put in their body all day, safer than the clear-looking stream running right past the village. For thousands of years, in countless places, everyone drank light alcohol from morning on, workers, mothers, even children, not to get drunk, but simply because it wouldn't make them sick. Booze wasn't only a celebration. For a very long stretch of our story, it was medicine that people were swallowing without any idea that's what it was. But every gift buried this deep in the body eventually casts a shadow. The ancient craving that once saved a starving ape was built for a very specific world. A world where alcohol was rare, weak, and scattered. Boozy fallen fruit rotted fast. Wild mead came maybe once a season. Our ancestors physically could not find enough of the stuff to truly destroy themselves, no matter how much they wanted it. And then we got clever. We learned to brew on purpose. We learned to ferment deliberately, then to distill, to boil a weak drink down and capture its strength, concentrating that ancient reward into something 10, 20, 40 times more powerful than anything nature had ever left on a forest floor. The wiring in our brains did not change. It couldn't. But the world around that wiring transformed completely. And in that gap, old craving, unlimited new supply, a tool that had kept us alive for 10 million years, quietly turned into a trap. This is the real reason a drink can call to you the way it does. When alcohol hits your brain, it floods it with the exact same reward chemicals that once lit up when an ancestor found food and lived another day. The deep, wordless signal that says, good, yes, you survived, do that again. And here's the cruel part. Your brain genuinely cannot tell the difference between a life-saving pile of fermenting fruit and a bottle sitting on a shelf. It just feels the ancient message. This is good, chase it. And it obeys, exactly as it was built to. So when a drink pulls at you, understand what's actually happening. That pull is not a character flaw. It's not weakness. It is 10 million years of survival software, written for a world of rare and scattered rewards, still running full speed inside a modern world that can put unlimited reward within arm's reach any hour of any day. You are not broken, you are ancient and out of place. So the next time you lift a glass, hold it there for just 1 second before you drink, and really understand what you are holding. That drink is an inheritance 10 million years in the making. It was handed down from a hungry ape on a rotting forest floor through every single ancestor who caught that sweet, sharp smell of fermentation, followed it, and lived because they did. It is the same warm reward that once turned enemies into allies, blessed the dead, and may have quietly built the first towns on Earth. And it is the same warm reward that can, just as quietly, take a life apart, A gift and a warning, poured into the very same cup, waiting in that very same sip. None of it is as simple as good or bad. It never was. It's just very, very old, and it's still sitting right there in your hand. If that made you look at your glass a little differently, subscribe and stay curious.